Hey, family, and thank you so much for tuning back into another amazing episode here on Gems Podcast. With me in the hot seat is David Schlossberg, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about David so you can definitely connect with him. And you already know me, Miss Genesis Amaris Kemp, the host. So, here is a little bit about David, y'all. He is definitely an influential man. David has a proven track record for increasing sales, revenue, and market share for family owned businesses. As a former sales executive for several large family agribusinesses companies with 100+ million. He has substantial experience serving on leadership teams and leadership committees, developing the vision and strategic plans for business development and revenue growth. David has worked directly with owners and investors who are taking the risk, their management teams, and the operations people at all levels within the organization. Most of his career experience has been in sales and business development, as well as product development and commercialization. So, without further ado, please welcome David Schlossberg to Gems Podcast.
Oh, thank you, Genesis. Really appreciate you having me on your program this morning, and look forward to our conversation.
My pleasure, David. And before we dive into B2B sales and business development, I definitely want to connect with you on a personal level so the audience gets to know you a little bit better. So there's two options I like to do here. So one is a rapid fire 10-question game, and the other one is an icebreaker up front. So which would you like to do?
Well, since my mind is not as sharp as I think it ought to be this morning, maybe just the icebreaker.
Okie dokie, here we go. We're breaking the ice with a David Schlossberg. So here's the question. I want you to share something crazy that you've done in your life or a fun and interesting fact about yourself.
Sure, I can share a story about something crazy, crazy and fun. And this is a all revolves around a family vacation that we took some years ago in New Zealand. And the crazy fun part was we decided to rent an RV for a week and drive around the South Island of New Zealand, which is just absolutely beautiful and spectacular. But I decided, to actually there was such a demand for recreational vehicles to rent. The only way I could secure a vehicle is to go through a business platform that was kind of your Airbnb of RVs. And we ended up renting the RV from a gentleman. It was his RV that he had been using for his family. His family they were all surfers, so it was really decked out for him and his family to go around the coast of New Zealand surfing. So very customized, and so we get in this RV, and it's a fairly old RV, but it seemed to be running just fine. And our first day out, we were kind of off in the country, going up a hill, and suddenly I noticed the RV was losing power. And couldn't figure out, I thought, well, maybe it was just the elevation, but then it was still losing power on the downside of the hill. So that seemed odd. And then I looked to my right, I noticed people were waving at me. And we pulled over to the side, and no sooner did I stop, smoke started billowing out of this RV. So the tragic thing was that the RV burned completely to the ground, completely toast, nothing left but the frame. But the good news is we got all our stuff out, but it was quite an event. And it's been a family story that we continue to talk about as just being a crazy time and a crazy vacation.
That is crazy. And after the RV burned down, like how did y'all get back to like the hotel or wherever you all were staying?
Yeah, that was the fun part. The people in New Zealand are just so nice and friendly. It was a local park ranger on his day off happened to passed by and was helping direct traffic around the obvious scene that was being created. And between this, our park ranger and a local police officer were nice enough to drive us back to the closest town, which was about 30 minutes away. And the police officer knew somebody that owned one of the hotels there and was able to get us a room for the night. And I mean, just the nicest people. And, you know, the company that we rented the RV through was able to get us another RV the next day. So we were back on our way. The sad part was we had just been to the wine country and bought all this wonderful wine and couldn't get that out of the RV in time. So.
Oh man. Well, I'm glad that the people in New Zealand were very nice and you guys were able to get back on the road and enjoy the remainder of your trip. So thank you for sharing that crazy story of you and your
Yes.
family in New Zealand. So let's
Yes.
just
We call it the burning van in New Zealand, burning van celebration.
So let's jump into our segment, which we're going to focus on business development and B2B sales. And your niche area with B2B sales is agriculture and horticulture. So let's first lay the foundation and explain to the audience what exactly is business development. Because sometimes people have one idea when in actuality, it may be more than just the idea or the assumption that they have. So yeah, just walk us through that, David.
So that's a really good question, actually. So really the difference between, there isn't a lot of difference between sales and business development necessarily. I like to look at it more of the business development as one key component or one key step in the sales process. And that's identifying markets or identifying customers or identifying products that you would like to introduce to a market or to a region, so that either have not been there or you haven't been present there. So you're really creating a market for your product or service. And so that's a lot of what I've done in my career is either creating a market for a service or creating a market for a product. And also it's creating or introducing a product or service that's new to a market. So it becomes something that's unique and allows you to differentiate your company from your competition.
And what are some of the challenges that you face whenever you're thinking about product development and introducing that to a new market where maybe you haven't really tested it out there fully, but you believe so strongly in this product that you're going to have a ROI? So you want to approach those businesses and do business to business sales, or sometimes even B2C, business to consumer sales, but it's getting over the challenges and jumping over that hurdle to make yourself successful.
Yeah, no, that's, again, I'll share with you a personal story in my last role that I had as a marketing and sales director for a company that actually produced blueberry plants for blueberry growers. And the business had two revenue streams. One was the production, growing plants and selling plants, and the other revenue stream was developing new varieties and introducing these new varieties to the marketplace. And it's the challenges that we face. One of the big challenges we faced was we would develop a new variety that everyone would get excited about. And the market would get excited about it as we started promoting it, but then we didn't necessarily have our production pipeline ramped up fast enough. So we ended up introducing a new variety that everyone's excited about, anxious to get and plant, and find out we didn't have enough plants. So then what you've done is committed kind of the cardinal sin of market development and product development, is you promote a product, but you don't have the pipeline to deliver the product. So you have disappointed customers. So that was, that's one example. the other area is you have to test your product to make sure it delivers on the promise. And so if you introduce a blueberry variety that you say is going to be, the berries are going to be so big and it's going to produce fruit in this window, and the fruit is going to taste like the sweetest thing you've ever eaten, and growers are going to be so happy because the plant is going to be easy to grow and yield lots of fruit. And then the growers plant it, and 2 years later the plants are, they're kind of poor performing and they're not yielding. And boy, that's a real problem, because your customers, you've lost credibility, and it could basically kick you out of the market for the future, because then you've lost your credibility with your customers. So you need to make sure that whatever you introduce, the promise, you can deliver on that promise. And the only way to do that is to test the product and give it the appropriate amount of time to determine, is this product really going to hold up once it gets into the consumer's hand, or once it gets into the grower's hand, depending on who your customer is and what the market is.
Absolutely. And those are two great examples, because sometimes people fail the testing part. So it's pretty much like taking the scientific method and applying it to business and then building out. And then another question I wanted to ask David is, what made you focus primarily on agriculture and horticulture? And I hope I pronounced the second one correctly. So keep me honest here.
Yeah, fabulous. Yeah, I got interested in, I grew up in the business, you could say. My dad had a business in New Jersey, where I was born and raised. It was a feed store and garden supply. So at an early age, I was exposed to plants. My dad was a fabulous gardener, so I was introduced to gardening at a young age, and I just that's all I kind of knew as growing up. I worked in my father's business from as soon as I was old enough and strong enough to carry a 50-pound bag of feed, and I was hired. So that's where I developed a passion for plants and gardening and horticulture.
Nice. So it was like always something that you saw because it was what your dad was doing. So do you think having that experience and exposure made it easier for you to get into the field, since you had firsthand exposure through your dad and his business?
Yes, I would say so. I mean, I ended up going to college and studying agriculture, getting a degree in agronomy, and it was fun, because the things I was learning, I could relate back to what I knew from the business, from my dad's business. So it seemed very relevant to me when I was going through studying the science of agriculture and horticulture.
Okay. Another idea a question I would say that I have is, whenever you think about effective sales, what are some strategies to really help you stay ahead of the curve in light of your competitors, to give you a competitive advantage? Because sometimes salespeople are sharks, and whenever you have that shark and bulldog tenacity, you could definitely turn folks off. But I think that if you lead with an impact and you are truly genuine about the product that you're bringing to the market, you're actually using your own product and not just trying to sell it, I think that goes a lot further versus just trying to, spitball somebody. I guess that's the nice way of saying it.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that one in a while, but yeah, we used to call in Texas. I spent a lot of time in Texas, and we used to call them the silver-tongued devils, or somebody who could sell poop in a boot. But the key to success is being genuine and being humble, and being able to basically listen, stop talking and listen to the customer, and if you take the time to just listen, hear the customer, and understand what problem they need to solve or what challenges they're having, and reflect on that, if you do that, you'll be very successful, because you'll take the time to think about, okay, how can I position my product to solve this problem for that customer? And sometimes you might have to get creative, about how you position that product, but at least you've taken the time to listen. And when somebody perceives that you're truly interested in what they have to say, you'll develop that trust, and that's the key. And the second thing is to follow through. If you say you're going to do something, you need to follow through and deliver. So many times what I've observed in sales teams and people that I've managed, they just are really drop the ball in the follow through, and customers, that's really the quickest way to lose faith, lose trust with a customer if you don't deliver on what you say you're going to do.
Absolutely. It's like your word is your bond. And I like that you mentioned the follow through, because that is also how you develop those key account relationships with
Yes.
your customers is deliver the product. Then once they have the product, follow up with them and say, how is the product working? Do you have any feedback, any improvements, anything else that you want to see? Or what problems are you having that maybe my company can solve? Because then if you hear it firsthand from the customers who are already inundated in your pipeline, then it actually helps you get ahead of the curve, because now you're delivering on demand and supplying what their needs are. So how beneficial is it to actually train your sales team to really build that rapport with the customers and really find out what they need? Because sometimes we don't ask the right questions. And when you ask the right questions, then you're able to be a bridge to the gap. And feel free to add on to that question or rephrase it.
So I think what I heard you ask is is about how to basically training and developing salespeople, and
Yes.
that is for me in my career, the best way to train someone is to really mentor. Is through mentoring. So sending a salesperson alone on a sales call or a presentation, especially when they're new. It's all about being the trainer and being the modeling the behavior, showing them how to develop a presentation, have them observe you present the service or product and answer questions, ask questions of the client. But it's basically a process of we call riding with or traveling with your salespeople in the field in front of customers, so they can observe how you do it. The other thing that's really important to do is to really codify the sales process from A to Z, from the point of contact. Once you get a lead, what is the process? What are the steps that you need to take to go from the lead to actually take a lead, convert it to a client, and close the sale? So if you can take that time to develop that process and codify it, and if you can automate it through a CRM or something, some type of CRM, then you're able to present to someone, say, here's how we do it. Here's the steps in the selling process. We can help teach you this process, and then we go out and we do it together. That's, I think, probably been the most successful way for me to train and develop salespeople.
I like that, because you are going with the salespeople. You're not letting them go on their own whenever they're new. You're developing a process that works. So as long as they follow that process, they could be successful. Then you come to the automation, making sure that they have a CRM in place, and the CRM can act as their backup to make sure that they're following every steps, and it's not going to let you move on to the next step until you get the first one done. And I think once you are strategic and you have everything in place, then that is also going to allow you to really drive those revenues, so the sales revenue growth that you also focus on. And I think sometimes people try to skip ahead steps, like they don't want to do the market analysis. They don't actually want to get out in front of the customer or the client. They just want to, just jump to the end. But you have to realize that without a steady and sturdy foundation, things are not going to flourish. So you have to be patient, you have to listen, you have to ask the right questions, and you have to learn from your failures in order for you to be successful.
Yeah, a couple other points to consider is that the very last comment you made is so relevant. Is that you need to create an environment where the new salesperson feels it's okay to fail, and basically embrace that failure when they do, and say, okay, well, what happened here? What steps can we take? What can we learn from this experience and apply that to your future development? And then the second thing is that provide resources for your salespeople in their product or service, so they become the knowledge expert and the product expert. Because there's nothing more challenging for someone new. Myself, I've experienced this. If you're not familiar with that product, you don't feel confident in that product or service that you're trying to sell or representing the company. It comes across in how you're perceived by your potential customers or clients. So really, product knowledge and being okay to knowing it's okay to fail, and knowing that their company supports you and that knows that that's part of the learning process.
Absolutely. And another thing that I would add on to that, David, is make sure that you're in an environment that welcomes 360 feedback, where the trainers are giving feedback to the trainees, and the trainees can also give feedback to the trainers, because they're not the ones out in the field doing the day-to-day grunt work. So if you see something that you could actually improve on, then go for it. And I'm just speaking from experience. My background's oil and gas. I was 12 years in the trenches there.
Oh boy.
At corporate America for 15 years. And I thought it was always great when I was in an environment where we offered 360 feedback, because I could tell you all day long how to do this job safety analysis. But if I'm not the one on the rig and drilling and fracking, then I don't know hands-on what's working and what's not. But I could tell you from a HSC perspective on, okay, this is what I think you should do, or a supply chain and logistics perspective, what my background is. But whenever the guy said, hey, I think that there's a better way to do this, I was like, okay, sure, let's shoot the breeze. Let's talk about it. Let's make sure that it's practical and it actually makes sense.
Yeah. Right. No, that's absolutely right. And the industry I was in, unfortunately, most businesses were really very small and either didn't see the need or didn't have the resources to provide that kind of 360 training. But when I did finally work for an organization that did that, it was transformational. It really was.
So now, before we jump into the call to action, David, I want to give you some time to share how they can actually drive sales revenue. Because if you're not making money, you're not growing, and you definitely want to have a business that is not just surviving, but thriving. So can you give some quick tips regarding that subject matter?
Driving sales revenue. Well, it's I think first of all, you can, whenever I approached a new market or an existing market, the first thing I would always try to go look at is where is the low-hanging fruit, and that's where I would focus my energy and develop my strategy, was to address that low-hanging fruit. So maybe you've got a really great product and you've got market share that you haven't tapped into, or you've got existing customers, and that's usually where it comes from, existing customers that you can sell more of your product or service if you present it perhaps in a different format, or it's just kind of an add to your list of products or services that you can sell to those existing customers and get an initial jump in revenue. And then from there, go out beyond the existing customers and develop new customers in an existing market, or look at a new market to sell to develop new customers. So kind of go for the low-hanging fruit and then build a strategy to develop new customers or new markets.
Okay, and that seems like really easy, the simplest part. Because if you know what the low hanging fruit is, you could capitalize on that. And once you capitalize on it, you could build. And I tell people it's the stair step model. You're gradually climbing up the stairs until you get to the top, but also make sure you're paying attention to the lessons that you learn along the way, what's working, what's not working. And I always encourage people do your own SWOT analysis whenever you are taking on something new. What are the strengths? What are the weaknesses? What are the opportunities? And what are the threats? And then pair that with how am I going to get a ROI? Because you want to make sure that not only are you working in the business, but you're working on the business.
Yeah, and I don't know if we have time, but I can give you an example where I was able to take business and grow it exponentially, because we basically took something that was an existing product, we repackaged it and sold it into a different customer retail channel. And it was basically it's dormant, so dormant perennial plants that are traditionally sold in a box, one at a time, at a garden center. And we took these bare root kind of, there's nothing pretty about them. There's nothing that the consumer looks at and goes, oh, that's got some pizzazz and sizzle. It's just looks like a dead stick, but it's a dormant grape or whatever, strawberry, blueberry. But we took those sticks, we put them in a shiny box, and we dressed them up with really snazzy marketing, and we packaged it in a pallet sales display unit, and took that to Costco, and we sold in one ad. It was the largest sale this company had ever had, and it was basically taking something existing, repackaging it, and finding a different market channel to sell it into. And so it's taking the time to think about your customer and say, okay, what are they doing? What products are we selling them? And where might be some gaps or opportunities to get creative and figure out how to find an angle for our product or service that's going to add volume, add sales, and also be a success for the customer.
Yeah, that's a good strategy, because definitely that rebranding and that marketing and packaging. Like one of my friends who's in marketing, she's like, "Do you have sexy packaging?" And I'm like, "What?" And she's like, "People actually look at the packaging." She's like, "Sometimes you could have the crappiest product, but if the packaging catches someone's attention and draws them in, they're gonna want to buy it." I said, "That's the dumbest idea." But then whenever I like paid attention, I was like, "Okay, you're totally right." And I was like,
Yeah.
it's so funny how we come from different backgrounds. I'm like, girl, I just want to do the grunt work, the dirty work. I'm used to hanging out with the guys all day. And then she's like, no, you gotta have sexy packaging, Genesis. And I was like, okay.
You have to, sizzle sells, as they say.
Yes. So let's jump into the call to action part of the segment, David. Once our audience hears the knowledge that you share today, what do you want them to do? Like, do you have a challenge for them? Do you want to funnel them to follow your website and connect with you? And then also share where you primarily hang out on social media.
So yeah, I'm one of the old white guys, so I hang out on LinkedIn. I'm not into, I guess I haven't figured out how to get on Instagram yet and do but that's where I hang out, LinkedIn. And I have a LinkedIn page for myself and for my business. It's Ferguson Alliance. And that you can find it on LinkedIn. And we also have a website. It's www.ferguson-alliance.com, and you can find me there and reach out to me. I would love to chat with you. And I'm available for speaking engagements or training, what you're looking for. But free to visit our website. There's a lot of information there, and would love to have an opportunity to chat with you.
And there you have it, listeners and viewers of GEMS Podcast. You just heard my special guest, David Schlossberg. All of his contact information will be in the show notes down below. So make sure you read, and connect. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to the podcast. We're on 40 plus platforms. You could also find all things video by heading on over to YouTube and typing in at Gems with Genesis Amaris Kemp. And last but not least, I want to thank each one of you for tuning in on a regular basis. Because of you, we are now ranked in the top 2.5% globally out of
Wow.
2.8 million podcasts per www.listennotes.com. So thank you so much for your continued efforts. And if you have any topics, any suggestions, or etc. that you want to see here on the platform, shoot me an email. You'll get me, not my VA. So until next time, peace, love, and lots of blessings. Be an asset, not a liability. And I challenge you to go learn something new about agriculture and horticulture so you can begin to be a well rounded person.